Hi, I'm Gabriella,
And I'm Jackson.
and today we're going to talk about intersectionality and how it adversely affects the oppression and discrimination people face. So, what is intersectionality and how does it work?
All right. So intersectionality is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who studies critical race theory and all that. And it's saying it's a theory based on identity and how its different states, like sex, race, class, sexual orientation, etc., adversely affect those who are already marginalized in society. And one big misconception about it is that it's some kind of leftist movement to silence people who don't experience or represent a wide range of struggles, like maybe me, for example, as a straight white guy. But in reality, it's an understanding that the different parts that make up the whole of a person can affect their struggle and experience in very different ways than other people. And so, just as background for me with this, I'm just an upper middle class straight white guy, so I don't really experience that much adversity, at least in terms of like being treated poorly by other people on a day to day basis. But I also realize, however, that like people are not asking me about my struggles because we are recognizing that I have privilege being a straight white guy and that I don't experience the same kind of widespread struggles that other people will face. Uh, actually, one young comedian, Udoya Travis, described white privilege as being when Magneto walks out over open air and a bridge forms beneath him. So, I mean, I thought that was kind of accurate. But so, me as compared to, say, a trans woman of color, 57% of which earn less than $10,000 a year, I'm going to have very different struggles and problems that I experience on a day to day basis than a trans woman of color would face normally. But in terms of this theory, we followed up and interviewed three people about their struggles and experiences. So first, we interviewed Grace Owusu from Ghana and South Africa, who spoke mostly on her race and described her experiences living as a black person in post-apartheid South Africa, and even today when she visits back, she experienced a lot of discrimination and poor treatment from other people. Whereas versus Alice, who was born in Uganda and raised in the UK, she believes that her being black didn't really affect her day to day life as much adversely because she's a woman and seen as docile and not much of a threat. Uh, but anyway, now we have an interview in which Gabriella attempts to find out what comprises one's intersectional experience.
I'm here. Okay.
So, first, can you state your name?
Saida Mizian.
Okay, and so do you know anything about intersectionality?
Um, yeah, so essentially intersectionality is about being able to empathize and like um, stand in solidarity with other struggles, and also relating them to your own struggle. Yeah, it's about like understanding why like all our struggles are interconnected while still like not taking away or appropriating someone else's struggle.
So, today I want to talk about the discrimination faced through intersectionality and first I want to ask, where are you from?
I'm from Palestine.
Okay. And so, can you think of any instances or if there ever has been one where you faced discrimination, whether being where you're from or in America and being Palestinian or from ignorance or.
Most certainly. Anytime that we are doing activism in general, and like a white person, for instance, sees that I am a person of color or that I'm even Palestinian, they immediately assume that I'm not a citizen, and so my work is deemed like it's not it's not valid. So that's definitely like that's discrimination. Certainly, being like, oh, you're a citizen, that's why you're not a citizen. That's why you hate America, and I'm like, actually, I am, and I can't be critical of the United States. Um, and um, what's really interesting, I mean, like within the United States, a Palestinian woman, like as a Palestinian woman, I feel like my struggle varies. It's very different from the struggle that I face in Palestine. Um, Here, it's a matter of uh, not necessarily decolonizing my own people. It's about decolonizing the American people because of something like intersectionality, like recognizing that like I have been stripped of autonomy, and so I have to help people understand why decolonizing thought and academia is necessary for me to be able to express and for them to be able to validate my narrative, essentially. Way that the framework for a lot of white savior feminism in relation to third world women, it's always been their solutions have always been absent of historical social context. It's well, a lot of the social disparities that we see in third world countries are largely due to imperialism. And so the solution is not to then engage in neo-colonialism. It's actually to deconstruct colonialism within these spaces. And so, yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic and structure.
So my next question is, your religion, do you practice any?
I am Muslim. I can't say that I'm diligent, practicing Muslim, but I'm certainly it's certainly an important part of my identity. Um,
So have you ever faced discrimination from being Muslim, especially in the South in America?
Certainly, yeah, most definitely I have. Also, when I say that I'm Palestinian, people automatically assume that I am a Muslim, which is not correct. They're
Coptic Christians.
yeah. There are Arab Jews,
Yeah.
there are Arab Christians, there are Palestinian Christians, and so it's I do definitely if it's not even just discrimination, it's xenophobia. And it's largely due to ignorance, people having absolutely no idea, and it's taken xenophobia in the States, especially in the South, has taken a very interesting, that's not the right word, has taken an especially brutal turn after 9/11. So,
And how they've completely vilified Muslims.
yeah, and with the Muslim ban, not long ago there was the Muslim ban. Just because you don't have the word Muslim, when you ban people from predominantly Islamic, people that are countries where there's a large Islamic community, it's
You're actively saying you don't want these people.
yeah,
in your
pretty
country.
much.
So then I wanted to ask you about your sex, sexual orientation. Are you straight, female?
So yeah,
identifiers.
How do I identify myself? I don't like to place myself in one box. So as far as I'm still trying to understand within our class, I'm trying to understand what the authority and authenticity of my sexual identity, the way that I identify. And I do know that I am biologically a female, and but I do reject the implications that come with that. I don't restrict myself to the psyche of the female. I don't believe that that is legitimate. And so I think that automatically, because I don't restrict myself by my biological burdens, I'm immediately placed into the box of, oh, you're just queer.
Yeah.
And so that's really, I don't identify any certain way. I just
you are who you are.
yeah, exactly.
And have people ever made you feel uncomfortable, or that your thought or how you feel is unworthy? It's not.
Certainly. I think what's really interesting is now that there are labels and words for certain things, your people assume that you should just identify with something. It's all about identity politics. Where do I exist? What struggle can I feed off of? Even so, it's I think, yeah, there's definitely people are scrutinized for identifying with something that is not like a part of the dominant culture. And yeah, I just want to say, people like, we talk about how yesterday in class we were talking about how like heterosexuality is like the norm, and so when we talk about homosexuality, it's like very different. Like Dwayne Wade, his son came out, and it's like a huge thing.
And
But
that
it's
he's
like,
so accepting about it.
yeah, but like the fact that we're even discussing this person's sexuality is like the absolute weirdest thing. Because it's like if he was straight, it wouldn't even be a problem. But it's like, yeah, people are arguing like, oh, he's an 11-year-old kid. How can he know? It's like when I was 11, I knew I liked boys.
Yeah.
So it's like it's
Why is
just
it so different?
Yeah, yeah. Why is this like so like out of the ordinary? And it's not, I don't even want to put it in terms of the norm. I think it's also important for us to realize that like things are the norm because I think they serve a greater like agenda. It's like I don't even I don't I think like Marx argues that our material situation is what like it's how we develop our ideologies, and I think because like politics and whatnot, like because we are structured in a certain because our society was structured in a certain way, we immediately believe like, okay, yeah, heterosexuality is the norm. So yeah, I think it's a part of a greater agenda is what I'm trying to say.
And so now class. So in the scheme of however you can define it now, because the lines are kind of blurred, but where do you see yourself falling in the levels of the class system, and has it affected you in any way?
I definitely am from a middle class family, like background, um, and so like the way that class is extremely important when we're talking about identity and the way that we engage in society, because with class comes privilege, and so it's being able to recognize the privileges that come with your class, with when you are a part or associated with a certain class. So like it's just like knowing your place, like um, it's about me like understanding that me coming from a middle class family means that I have experienced things very differently from a person that comes from a lower class, even like a Palestinian that comes from a lower class, and it's making sure that I am like stepping away and allowing legitimate Palestinian voices to contribute to the larger conversation.
My final question for you is, what are your thoughts on people considering intersectionality as a leftist movement that's just trying to perpetrate like further segregation, and like once again calling millennials or Generation Z crybabies who just wanna further bring up the fact that they're different and like blame whites, for example, for their oppression?
So definitely we see within the right like these like giving people crybabies or like extremely sensitive, and that really is just like that's a means to censor people, because in the right like people want to talk shit about people of color and then get away with it. Am I allowed to curse?
Yes.
Okay. So just yeah, people want to be racist and not be held accountable, and so like when we speak about intersectionality or accountability and we're like, hey, you can't be racist, they're like, oh, you're a crybaby, and it's like, no, I just don't want you to like spew racist like rhetoric that could potentially lead to like discrimination.
And then there's this thing with, oh, everyone's being PC now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like
when can a joke just be a joke?
And it's interesting when like people when like white people are like, stop being politically correct. It's like no, people of color don't want you to don't want to be at the end of your jokes anymore. It's like that's just what it is. And I think like it's really interesting because for so long people of color like did not recognize the patterns, like these, like, this is the way that our politicians engage, like the way that they speak, the way that they like engage with the greater public, and this whole movement about like political correct, it's all about accountability.
Yeah.
And
And people don't like to be held accountable at the end of the day.
exactly, and that's been the greatest contributor to like people of color's oppression, because when we are constantly like normalizing this rhetoric like of yeah, like people of color are just like inferior to, it's like, no, that's been internalized by people of color, and that's why I think it's so necessary for us to call these things out. I think intersectionality is so important, and it definitely is. I will say a product of the left, because this is something that the right is like goes over the heads of the right, and like the right will argue, no, we do have intersectionality. Candace Owens is a black woman, and it's like Candace Owens spoke at LSU the other day to a room full of white people about how racism doesn't exist. It's like, what does that mean? Like, so intersectionality is extremely necessary. It's a means for us to understand other struggles, relate them to our own, but also understand that each marginalized group has a very different problem that requires a very specific approach.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.